محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على 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 محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على
لكم الغوالي الغاليات غياض غنى لمجدك ليلها وصباح وتأودت أعطاف كل خميلة وشدا سلاما بلبل صباح.
In the world of the eternal, we are united by the brotherhood of Islam, as expressed in the Shahada, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Time has had its impact, and today 1,000 million people, all bound by the same testimony of the Muslim faith, live in different cultures, communicate in different languages, live under different constitutions, and differentiate in varying degrees in the interpretation of their faith. This plurality of the Muslim world is no doubt an irreversible inheritance from the past and continues today. But if it contributes as it should to the widest harnessing of our faith to all aspects of our lives in the generation of today and tomorrow, and is clearly within the principles of Islam, it is a strength for which we must be grateful. Valuing and drawing upon diversity as a source of strength was among the major factors which enabled Muslims in the past to create great civilizations. To all my spiritual children who are present here today, and to your families, wherever they may be, I give my most affectionate, loving blessings for barakah and the resolution of whatever difficulties you may be facing. My brothers and sisters in Islam and other faiths should be assured that my deep and heartfelt prayers are with you for your peace, your unity, and for your happiness. Kanavadan, Kanavadan, Kanavadan. I also convey to you my warm gratitude for the magnificent copy of the Ottoman Quran Sharif that you have given to me. It will be a wonderful memory of my golden jubilee to Syria. Kanavadan, Kanavadan, Kanavadan.
Ya Ali Madad, welcome, bienvenue, Khoshamadid. A very warm welcome to tonight's Friday night reflections to our Jamaat and multi-faith family members. My name is Naik Arbabzada, and I'm honored to be hosting tonight's program. The weather has turned cooler, and I know some parts of the country, including here in Edmonton, we have already embraced winter with its first sprinkles of snow. Despite the challenges of COVID-19, I've had two exciting and important life events happen to me in the last few months. First, I got married. We used the gorgeous setting of the Aga Khan Garden to take pictures that we will cherish for a lifetime. I have also started the clerkship component of my medical education at the University of Alberta. I do know that for me, it has always been a source of great strength to feel that I have our community and our faith. And I know that this is true for so many of you. But sometimes it can help to hear about and remind ourselves of how we can get through these difficult times and keep our faith strong. And that is the focus of this episode of Friday Night Reflections. I hope that tonight's show will help us to better manage and adjust to a trying time. We are honored to have Darkhana Mukhi Sahib join us to say a few words on behalf of the Jamaati Mukhi Kamadias Sahibs and Mukhiani Kamadiani Sahibas across the country. I know that for me, it has always been a source of great strength and joy to be able to interact with the Jamaati Mukhi Kamadias Sahibs and Mukhiani Kamadiani Sahibas, especially at a time when not all of us have the opportunity to do so. So it is a comfort to have Darkhana Mukhi Sahib join us tonight. We're also privileged to have Alwaez Jamil Sawani joining us tonight. Many of you will have heard Alwaez Jamil in the past speak on facets of faith, which happens every Monday night. Tonight, he will be speaking about hope and courage in difficult times, drawing inspiration from the Holy Prophet, may peace be upon him and his family. I am really looking forward to hearing Alwaez share some insights on this very relevant topic. And of course, as always, we will sit back and enjoy the wonderful music of our Jamaati artists. Now, it is an honor to welcome Darkhana Mukhi Sahib, Dr. Nazmudin Bhanji, to say a few words.
My dear brothers and sisters, Ya Ali Madad, it is my deepest pleasure to be speaking to you on behalf of all the Mukhi Kamadia and Mukhiani Kamadianis from across the country. As the Jamaat knows, we continue to live in very difficult times, and the challenges that we face due to COVID-19 as a global Jamaat, as Canadians, are unlike any others which we have experienced in our lifetime. It is important to recognize how difficult this is for so many of us in ways that we sometimes may not even recognize. It has been for many challenging economically, socially, spiritually, mentally, and physically. So let us remember to be gentle with ourselves, to take time to care for the mental and physical health, as well as to extend kindness, understanding, and support to others whenever the opportunity arises. You know, over the past number of months, as our Jamaat Khanas reopened, one of the things that struck me the most is the significance of the spiritual. We often speak about the importance of balancing our material and spiritual lives and not forsaking one for the other. When our Jamaat Khanas opened after a long period of closure, what I experienced when I sat in Jamaat Khana looking at the Jamaat was the extraordinary sense of the spiritual, of something beyond ourselves, something that can be easily forgotten when we focus only on our physical selves and the demands of our day-to-day lives. Tonight's program is a reminder for us not only of the importance of attending to that part of our lives, but that our faith can anchor us and be a profound source of inspiration in our physical lives. So I hope that we are all taking this time during the pandemic to attend to our spiritual selves and to take care of our souls in addition to our bodies. I also want to pay a special tribute this evening to our extraordinary volunteers who have kept us safe, who have cared for some of our most vulnerable, who have extended support to those in need, who have kept our Jamaat Khanas running and done so much to bring us together. I know that it's not been easy and that you have sacrificed time with your families, loved ones, or other obligations. I must say that the selflessness and devotion with which I've seen our volunteers offer their services has been absolutely remarkable. And on behalf of all the Mukhi Kamadias and Mukhiani Kamadianis across the country, I offer our heartfelt appreciation and prayers for your continued strength in service to the Imam and the Jamaat. You are our essential workers, and the dedication and love you've shown for our Jamaat will forever remain with us. Finally, I know that there are still many Jamaati members who have not been able to make it to Jamaat Khana, or not as frequently as they would like. Please know that whether you are in Jamaat Khana or not, our thoughts, our good wishes, and our prayers are with you. We are thinking of you and concerned for your well-being, wherever you may be, wherever you may be. Please remember that we are here for you. On behalf of all the Mukhi Kamadia and Mukhiani Kamadiani across Canada, we pray for your good health, for your happiness, for your prosperity, for your peace and security, and that we may emerge together from these difficult times as even more united, caring, and stronger Jamaat. Thank you, and Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you so much, Mukhi Sahib, for your thoughts and well wishes. It means so much to us to hear from you, and especially to see you at the Ismaili Center, Vancouver. We start the next segment of our program with the beautiful Qasida Ali Goyam from the soundscape at the Diamond Jubilee Homage Ceremony at Eglamour, followed by Alwaez Jamil Sawani. Alwaez Jamil Sawani is a lawyer by profession and comes to us from here in Edmonton. Alwaez Jamil completed his Juris Doctor degree from the University of Alberta in 2010 and is a practicing member of the bar in Edmonton in the areas of civil and criminal litigation, specializing in civil and constitutional rights. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jamil for many years and the privilege of serving with him on the Conciliation and Arbitration Board for Edmonton in the past term. Please join me in welcoming Alwaez Jamil Sawani.
Safdar, Ali Munis, Ali Dildar, Ali Budyar Peygamber, Ali Goyam, Ali Joyam, Ali Goyam, Ali Joyam, Ali Goyam, Ali Joyam,
Ali Sultan Mulki Jan, Ali Shah, Shaykh Quba, Ali Ayin, Ali Yazdan, Ali Goya, Ali Joya, Ali Goya, Ali Joya, Ali Goya, Ali Joya.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Ya Ali Madad. It has been nearly 8 months now since our Jamaat and Jamaats around the world began to take steps to keep us safe and healthy in light of this pandemic. We're all living through it. And what we had all hoped would be a short disruption in our lives has continued to impact us all. And as the weather changes this fall, and we experience second and third waves of the pandemic across the regions, it's natural that we all long for things to just go back to normal. And although we are lucky in Canada that Jamaat Khanas have resumed in a limited capacity, the limitations essentially on large gatherings and socialization remains. And I, like you, just long for the opportunity to meet my friends and catch up while having a cup of chai at Jamaat Khana. It is in challenging times like this that it helps to look to our past and our history for hope and courage. And in so doing, we realize that the faith of Islam itself emerged from a society that was in turmoil, with social, economic, and spiritual challenges that our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam courageously took on. And the Prophet was the first and foremost problem solver of his day, addressing the problems and challenges of his time. In 1976, Maulana Hazir Imam addressed this very example of the Prophet in a speech delivered in Karachi, Pakistan. This was during his extended visit to the Jamaat in Pakistan, where the Imam was invited by Maulana Kausar Niazi, who is then Pakistan's Federal Minister for Religious Affairs, to preside over the International Conference of the Sirat. The conference itself took place over a 10-day period in which eminent scholars from around the world spoke on various aspects of the life of the Prophet, including his example and his sirat, that being the footsteps that he left behind. In a recording of the Imam's remarks, which was broadcast nationally on Radio Pakistan, we can hear him speak about the importance of reflecting on the Prophet's life and his example.
The Holy Prophet's life gives us every fundamental guideline that we require to resolve the problem as successfully as our human minds and intellect can visualize. His example of integrity, loyalty, honesty, generosity both of means and of time, his solicitude for the poor, the weak, and the sick, his steadfastness in friendship, his humility in success, his magnanimity in victory, his simplicity, his wisdom in conceiving new solutions for problems which could not be solved by traditional methods without affecting the fundamental concepts of Islam. Surely, all these are foundations which, correctly understood and sincerely interpreted, must enable us to conceive what should be a truly modern and dynamic Islamic society in the years ahead.
Our Prophet approached every challenge with large measures of patience, creativity, and hope. After the Prophet received his mission to spread the teachings of Islam and inspire social justice in his community, he experienced tremendous amounts of opposition, including threats from the inhabitants of his own city, Mecca, including from people he used to consider his friends and even members of his own family. The Prophet remained within Mecca for as long as he could, and he patiently thought of ways to peacefully spread his message among the people while maintaining the safety and security of his growing community of believers. But ultimately, when he could no longer keep his community secure in Mecca, he immigrated along with his followers to the town of Yathrib, where he established a city that was based upon the ethics of Islam, the ethics of universal brotherhood and sisterhood that we now call Medina. The emigration, or this hijrah, was a solution to the problem of security faced by his community. But the Prophet always retained that hope of one day returning to his home city of Mecca. So it was that 6 years later, and after many further trials and tribulations, the Prophet did leave Medina with over 1,000 of his followers to return to Mecca in hopes of performing the pilgrimage, the Hajj. Now I can only imagine how excited and happy the Prophet and his followers must have felt during that journey back to Mecca. But just as they were about to arrive near the city, their way was blocked by soldiers commanded by the enemy Quraysh of Mecca. Although the Prophet's companions far outnumbered the soldiers that they did encounter, the Prophet had come with his believers in peace and unarmed in order to perform the pilgrimage, and he did not want any bloodshed. He was faced with the challenge of trying to ensure the safety and security of his community while keeping the hope of returning to Mecca alive. The Prophet, in keeping with these goals, entered into a negotiation with the Quraysh at a place called Hudaybiyah, where he ultimately brokered a 10-year peace between the Muslims and the Quraysh of Mecca. But there were a number of conditions that the Prophet had to reluctantly accept in order to broker this peace. The Quraysh refused to start the treaty with the phrase Bismillah, or even to refer to Muhammad within the treaty as Rasulullah, the messenger of Allah, because they did not accept the Prophet's beliefs, his belief in Allah, or his own prophethood. The Quraysh also demanded that the Prophet and his followers return to Medina immediately, without stepping even 1 foot into Mecca that year. They were promised that they could come the following year for pilgrimage, but they could not even set sight on the Kaaba at that moment. I can just imagine how these conditions would have been extremely painful and upsetting for the Muslims who had accompanied the Prophet on that long and arduous journey. The believers and the companions of the Prophet had initially left their homes and sacrificed everything for their belief in Allah and the Prophet, and the refusal of the Quraysh to even acknowledge their faith within the treaty would have been an extremely difficult pill to swallow. On top of that, for many of the believers, Mecca was their original hometown, where they were born and grew up. Many had left their families behind when they left with the Prophet for Medina. And there they were, a short distance away from their goal, from their home. They could probably see the outline of the mountains surrounding Mecca in the distance. And now they were being told that they had to turn around and wait for the next year in order to try to return. Many were upset and disagreed with the terms of the agreement. But the Prophet also surely felt this disappointment in his community. But his ultimate and paramount goal was the importance of keeping his community safe and secure. And he would do so as long as there was no compromise in the fundamentals of his faith. And so Prophet Muhammad asked Hazrat Ali alayhi salam to draft the treaty in accordance with the Quraysh's demands. And it was also at this time, after signing the treaty, that Prophet Muhammad sat in the shade of a tree, there on the outskirts of Makkah at Hudaybiyah, and asked his followers to come forward one by one and place their hands on his hand and give him their bay'ah or allegiance, and in so doing acknowledge the Prophet's right to guide the community in accordance with the time and the circumstances so as to ensure their physical and spiritual well-being and upliftment. Surah 48 of the Quran, Al-Fath, was revealed on this occasion. And the first verse of the surah proclaims, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. Verily, we have granted thee a manifest victory. Later, in ayah 10 of the surah, which was also revealed on this occasion, we hear verses that would be very familiar to the Jamaat, which read, Inna alladhina yubayyunaka, innama yubayyun Allah, yaddullahi fa'uka aydihim. Verily, O Prophet, those that give their bay'ah to you give their bay'ah but to Allah. Allah's hand is upon their hand. And all the believers who accompanied the Prophet on that occasion gave him their bay'ah. And the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, in hindsight, was the beginning of a lasting peace for the Prophet's community. The believers' hope was rewarded the very next year when the Prophet and the believers entered the city of Makkah victorious, without any opposition, and Islam spread throughout the city. The Muslims who once had to flee the city were able to return and stay and even reunite with their families. And as we look to the challenges we face today, like the companions of the Prophet, we are all feeling a little displaced. We miss the comfort, the camaraderie, and the upliftment that comes from being with one another as a Jamaat. And like the Prophet's companions, who came so close to entering the city of Makkah, only to be turned away, it would surprise none of us if a further rise in infection rates may result in further restrictions in Jamaat Khana attendance or even temporary closures. But like the Prophet's companions, we do have guidance in the form of our Imam and a hope and assurance from our Imam that the steps being taken right now are for our safety and security, and ultimately that we will get through this trying period. The Prophet's example of problem solving can also inspire us to address the challenges we face during this pandemic through our own efforts and creativity. In his speech given at an international development conference in Washington, D.C. in 1987, Hazir Imam quoted the Quran and stated, An ayat in the Quran says, Verily, God does not change man's condition unless they change that which is in themselves. We must show greater faith in the ability of the individual to be creative. We can see many examples in our history where our Jamaat has used its creativity to solve problems that seemed insurmountable. For example, following the Soviet occupation of Tajikistan in the 1920s, their government enacted strict and often violent secularization campaigns, and religious gatherings and observances were banned altogether. Our members of our Jamaat were forced to hide the practice of their faith, and they could not gather together for any form of collective prayer or worship. The majority of the Jamaat was also physically cut off from the Imam and his institutions. So the Jamaat of Tajikistan decided to follow in the footsteps of the Prophet and respond to this crisis with patience, creativity, and hope. Since they could not gather together in masjids or Jamaat Khanas for prayer, families converted their own homes into places of prayer and solace. Families created, memorized, and passed on devotional literature within their own households, including qasidas and madhos, which embodied the principles and ethics and beliefs of the faith. The qasida Ali Goyam, Ali Joyam that we recently listened to was one of the many devotional expressions that kept the light of the faith shining in the Bamiri Jamaat. They even infused these principles into the very foundations and pillars of the buildings in which they lived. The iconic Bamiri house, features 5 pillars representing the Panchtan Pak. And various religious rites would be undertaken within the household and would be associated with each of the pillars within the home, in order to ensure that the deen was never separated from their dunya. All the while, they also kept alive the hope of a better future in which they could one day practice their faith openly and regain contact with their imam. Their patience and hope did bear fruit when the imam did visit Tajikistan in 1995. And since then, that Nurani day, the Jamaat of Tajikistan has been able to practice their faith freely, and through the imam's blessings, have even established Jamaat Khanas, where they can come together in prayer. The Khorog Jamaat Khana, which was completed recently, is actually modeled upon the design of a traditional Pamiri house. And it stands as a testament to the patience, creativity, and enduring hope of the Jamaat. This week, we will be celebrating the birthday of the Prophet, Miladun Nabi. And one of the ways in which we can honor and celebrate the Mawlid this year is by also seeking to walk in the footsteps of the Prophet during these challenging times, by exhibiting patience, creativity, and always remaining hopeful. We can use this unique time as an opportunity to re-engage with the creative aspects of our faith. We can recite or listen to recitations of the Quran, qasidas, and ginans. We can also set up special spaces or times within our homes for the practice of our faith. We can use some of that time that we would have spent out and about to engage in reflection, dhikr, and personal search. And we can even reach out to one another in order to virtually share that cup of chai. Now, none of these serve as replacements for Jamaat Khana. But who knows, some of these creative solutions and habits that we instill in ourselves today, inside our families, as a result of these current challenges, may stand the test of time and stay with us even after things return to normal, inshallah. Like the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, what seems like a loss right now may actually be the beginning of a manifest victory. I'd like to thank all of you for joining me this evening. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you so much, Alwaez, for your thoughtful and inspiring reflections. It gives us great hope to know that our faith has always been a source of great strength and courage, even at its very beginning. We now end our show with some wonderful musical pieces to lift our spirits. Thank you so much for joining tonight. It has been a pleasure to be your host and spend this evening with you. Please stay on to enjoy the wonderful musical pieces of our Jamaati artists. And we will see you next Friday.
Bismillah. जहां में तू है मेरा आका, मैं तेरा गुलाम, तुझी पे खत्म है, तुझी से शुरू। अल्लाह अल्लाह सितारे बरसती है बूंदे, ये ऊंचे पहाड़ ये उड़ते परिंदे, चमकते सितारे बरसती है बूंदे, तेरे ही हुक्म से ये सूरज तुलू। अल्लाहू 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 अल्लाहू। न कर इतना गौर व फिक्र नादा, वो मालिक इस जहां का तू है कि इंसान। न कर इतना गौर व फिक्र नादा, वो मालिक इस जहां का तू है कि इंसान। ये मुमकिन नहीं है होना उसके रूबरू। अल्लाहू अल्लाहू अल्लाहू। मैं ना शुक्र बंदा हूँ तेरा खुदाया, तू मालिक है राज़िक बनाया गुलिस्ता। मैं ना शुक्र बंदा हूँ तेरा खुदाया, तू मालिक है राज़िक बनाया गुलिस्ता। मैं कैसे पहचानूं तेरी कलाम